Hi guys, Russell here from homebrewrepublic.co.nz. How you going? Welcome to today's brew review. We're checking out the Mangrove Jack's Craft Series Red IPA. Let's get into the brew. Russell here from homebrewrepublic.co.nz. Welcome to today's brew review. You already know we're checking out the Mangrove Jack's Craft Series Red IPA. Now the last 3 or 4 brews that I've done have all been bigger brew reviews where I've done a double batch with a basics brew and a recipe brew. I really wanted to do something simple today, which is why I've chosen to go for a Craft Series kit, which always put out a good brew. It's also been a while since I've done a Craft Series kit, and you know that I'm a big fan of these kits. I'm also a big fan of IPAs, and it's been quite a while since I've done one. So the first question would be, what are we getting with this kit? Here is the description on the label. Smooth malt body with complex fruit flavours and a pleasant hop balance, finished with a dry and satisfying bitterness. One good thing for me about doing all these brew reviews is I'm trying a wider range of beers in my brewing than I ever have before, and 2 things I've discovered that I really like. I like a drier finish in beers, and I also like a big intense bitterness. So the dry finish, we've already picked that up from the description, that's what we're going to get, but let's check out some of the specs. Okay, ABV, our approximate alcohol by volume, 5.3%. So we've got a nice mid-hitting beer here. The other things to note though is the bitterness, which has an IBU or International Bitterness Units of 40 to 45. IBU is on a scale of 100. Now to give you some examples, one of my favourite ever Craft Series kits, which is the Juicy Session IPA, had an IBU of around 30, and I called that a nice easygoing mid-bitterness. Another of the Craft Series kits, which I really liked and I rated up there with the Juicy Session IPA, was the American IPA, Craft Series American IPA. Now that had a bitterness of 48 to 56, and I described that as a solid or a big hitting bitterness. So back to this IBU, 40 to 45, I'm expecting a really solid and a really noticeable bitterness, which I'm looking forward to. Now, the last thing to note, which I'm really looking forward to about this brew, which I think is going to be a distinctive character, is the colour. So the colour here is dark amber. Now, before we talk a little bit more about this kit, I'll talk very quickly about the fermentation ingredient that I'm going to use for this brew. Normally I talk about additional ingredients required quite separately, but this seemed like a logical place to introduce fermentation fuel. What you require to get this brew fermenting is a kg of dextrose or a kg of brew enhancer. You could also look at using a product like a kg of liquid brewing sugar. As an alternative, what you could also use is liquid malt extract. Now, I've always been a fan of liquid malt extracts, especially in something like an IPA, because it's going to give us a little bit more body, a little bit more malt character, and definitely a smoother mouthfeel. What I've chosen to use in this case is an amber liquid malt extract. So what I just talked about before when we were looking at the kit is one of the defining characteristics being this dark red or dark amber colour. I really want to build on that and stay with it, so I've chosen the amber liquid malt extract. A couple of other quick points. When you're using liquid malt extract, you're always going to require a slightly higher volume than if you were using something like dextrose. So again, as an example, if you go back to the pack, you need a kg of dextrose or 1.2 kgs of liquid malt extract. Now the reason for that is something like dextrose is completely fermentable, whereas something like liquid malt extract is not completely fermentable. So you need a slightly higher volume to get the same amount of sugars for fermentation. What I've got here, instead of 1.2 kgs, which is what's required, is a 1.5 kg pack. Now there's no specific reason for that, other than that was what was in my cupboard, and so that's what I'm going with. But what that will do, if you want to use a slightly higher volume, and you could even mix and match ingredients, so you could also bring, if you wanted to, a little bit of dextrose into the brew, but doing that is going to help, it would let you bring up your ABV above the approximate ABV that's stated on the pack. So the stated ABV on the pack was 5.3, we're using a little bit more liquid malt extract, so we'd certainly expect to hit that, if not get slightly higher than 5.3. This, guys, is the kit itself, and there's a number of reasons why I'm a big fan of the Craft Series kits. First one is the filling process. So this is a soft pouch, which is different from the cans of extract that we're normally used to, and it's filled using a different process, a nitrogen flushed process. Now the main benefit is that that filling process is meant to better enhance and protect the flavours and the aromas of the malt character. So basically better malt, better finished product. Now the other reason I love these kits is that they come with premium yeast and dry hops. So when you factor that in, they're incredible value for money and really are going to let you make a craft quality beer at home. And these are also very clever pouches. What we have, if you feel, is you have a soft side, which is where your malt is, and you have a dry side, which is where you have your dry ingredients. Now I want to show you a clever little trick. What a lot of brewers do is they will sit their malt in a bucket of warm water or a bowl of warm water to soften the malt and get it out of the packet a lot easier. Because we've got a dual pouch with a dry side, you don't necessarily want your dry ingredients, particularly your yeast, being sat into that warm water. So what you can do is, if you identify your dry side with a knife, very carefully you can open your dry side, and then your hops, comprehensive step-by-step instructions, premium yeast. Now I've already said that one of the reasons I really like the Craft Series kits is they include the dry hop pellets, but the other piece of that is it's not one style of hops, it's generally a mix of hop styles which come included with these kits, which are specifically blended for the brew that we're making. Now in this case it's 50 grams, and it's a combination of Mosaic, of Citra, and of Nelson Sauvin. The Citra hop really needs no introduction. It's one of the most coveted aroma hops in the US. It's very much got a citrusy profile with elements of grapefruit, lime, and tropical fruits. The Mosaic hop is definitely an interesting one. I found one description online which claimed that it was Citra on steroids. I'm not sure that I specifically agree with that, but what it also said is it's highly complex. Now that piece I will agree with. What we've got with the Citra is, with the Mosaic, is mango, pine, citrus, herbs, and an aroma of tropical and stone fruits. The last hop we have today in our trio is the Nelson Sauvin, which is of course a New Zealand hop. My understanding is it was developed by New Zealand's Plant and Research Institute. It was released in 2000, so in that respect it's a reasonably young hop. I have seen it described as one for judicious use, and certainly described as a new age hop. Now the flavour profile comes almost exclusively from crushed gooseberries, so it very much has a flavour that's quite similar to what you would describe as a new age white wine. So hopefully what that's going to do is give us a really nice edge and a really nice breadth of flavour across the profile of our beer. All that said, guys, let's have one quick chat about process. Step by step, comprehensive instructions. All you have to do is make sure you follow them. I've already talked about the fermentation temperature range when I talked about the yeast. So the only instruction I'm going to call out is when we add the hops. So these dry hops don't get added until day 7, assuming that specific gravity has reached 1.020 for dextrose or 1.025 for liquid malt extract, which is what we're using. So what we're going to be doing is getting this brew on. I'm going to get my fermenter, get it all mixed up. I'm going to get it down to the garage, getting it into my temperature control room. We'll check back in when we pitch the yeast, and then we'll be waiting until day 7. We will check gravity, make sure it's at the required level. We'll add our hops, and then I always take fermentation out for 2 weeks. Even if fermentation's finished early, I just let it sit. Will never do your brew any harm. And the last thing I would say is, if you've ever got any doubts that fermentation is over, it will do you no harm just to let it sit for an extra day, 2 or 3. All that said, guys, I'm going to say too much talking, not enough brewing. let's get this brew fermenting. Cheers. Alrighty guys, welcome to the garage and my temperature control fridge. Here we go guys, check it out. Dual temperature controller. We have got our ambient temperature in the fridge down to 8.5. The brew's been in there for about 6 hours now, albeit the temperature in here has come down. The brew is still a little bit warmer. I had a look on the firm strip and it was showing 22 to 24. That'll keep dropping down, just needs a little bit more time with the fridge holding at its temperature. However, that is a nice place to chuck the yeast in. The ideal temperature for the yeast was 18 to 23, so I've got it sitting on 19, just kind of nicely lower into that. All that said guys, let's get this lid off and get this yeast in. Here we go guys, gave it a bit of a stir just to aerate it before we pitched the yeast. Obviously made sure my spoon was sanitized. There we go though, yeast M36 Liberty Ale. Whoa. In she goes. That's it guys, easy as that. Gonna get this lid back on. Next time I see you will be around about day 7 to pitch our hops. Cheers! Ladies and gentlemen, we are 24 hours since we pitched our yeast. You can see here the temperature is holding nicely, 19 degrees. Fermenting, no questions asked. See you on day 7 guys. Welcome back, day 7. You can see from bubbler activity fermentation has slowed down, but we'll have a look inside. I'm sure we'll see it is still going. I've checked gravity and it was 1.020. That is under the 1.025 we were looking for because we're using liquid malt extract. There's our hops. Remember it came with the kit. Let's get that lid off, get those hops in. Here we go guys. Check that out. Very, very subtle level of activity on the surface, but we can see up the sides how active fermentation was. Got our hops there. There they are guys. Hop pellets, if you've never seen them before. In we go. Oh. Alright guys, so you can see I go Lone Ranger. That works for me on the basis that I can cold crash. It's the cold crashing that's going to help me clear that up with the use of finings and then a sediment filter in my bottling bucket as a absolute backstop. But if you don't have if you don't have the ability to cold crash, what I would suggest you do is use a hop sock. Make life a lot easier, help you keep that mush contained. All that said guys, I'm now going to put this lid back on. What I will be doing from here is letting the brew run. I'll keep an eye on gravity. I suspect this will finish fermenting next 3 or 4 days. Either way, even if it finishes before then, I'll leave this to sit for 12 days. If fermentation hasn't finished, I'll just let it sit longer. I will add finings, I will cold crash for 48 hours, and then I'll rack off into my bottling bucket and bottle. All that said, guys, next time I see you will be the official taste test. Go well. Hey guys, welcome back to the official taste test for the Mangrove Jack's Craft Series Red IPA. What do you say we get into this? Alright, got a bottle, freshly chilled. Okay, bottle, glass, pour. Alright, now, background here. I have been, just talking about this brew for a long time. I actually brewed this in August last year, and we're now April. Never intended to leave it this long before I finished off the video, but it has been bottle maturing for about 7 months. And very, very nice finish. So first of all, I love that colour. Really, really rich, beautiful, dark amber. I think I like it as well. I mean, it's really stunning. But it's very different to the brews that I normally drink. So in terms of colour, awesome. Good clarity, but really, really moody, dark depth. It's really awesome. Alright, in terms of our aroma, very much led by those fruit notes, and I would say citrus fruit notes. The big one that comes up for me is probably very, very close to Tangelo. But yeah, fruit. Alright. Flavour profile gets really interesting. Because it was so long ago, I revisited the website around the manufacturer's description, if you will, and what they say is smooth malt body with complex fruit flavours, pleasant hop balance, finished with dry, satisfying bitterness. Overall, I generally agree with that. So, flavour profile. When we jump in, very much led by the citrus notes. We're going to get those coming through very heavily from the hops we've used as well. You look at like Citra and Mosaic, both good notes of citrus coming through from those hops. And then in terms of the fruit notes, the word that was used in the description was complex fruit flavours, and that is certainly not an understatement. No question, we've got the tropical notes coming through, but we've also got the Tangelo notes. I would go as far as to say tanginess in there, potentially coming through from like the Nelson Sauvin and the gooseberry or sort of grape flavours that might come through from there. Also, when you look at the Mosaic, we sort of start mixing in with earthy, herbal, woodsy notes. And the Mosaic by itself is considered to be, or to introduce, a very complex flavour profile. So definitely agree, led out by the citrus, backed by fruit notes, and that is huge complexity in those fruit notes, which starts to get mixed in with, like I said, earthy, herbal, woodsy tones as well. Then we move. Actually, the bitterness jumps right off the front on this one. One of the defining factors of this brew is a massive bitter back. So on the pack, they said 4 out of 5 for bitterness. The IBU, which is International Bitterness Units, was I think it was 40 to 45. To put that into context, the Juicy Session IPA was, I think that's around 30. So huge bitter front on this, and I like it. Like, I like a big chunk of bitterness, so it certainly hits the spot there for me. What I find with the flavour profile, jumping back to that fruity piece for a second, there's almost a hint of spiciness, and I'm not sure if that's coming through, if that's actually coming through from the flavour profile or if it's the perception coming through from the bitterness, but either way it's there and really enjoyable if that's your thing. What I like about this brew, and we haven't talked about the malt character yet, is the flavour profile overall is massively complex and there are so many elements and dynamics to it. Two things I would suggest. What I find is when I let this sit in my mouth rather than taking it back, so to speak, I'll pick up different flavours all over the place. So it's really enjoyable from that perspective. The other thing I found is this is one of those brews where the flavour profile can really change as the temperature of the brew changes. I would certainly encourage letting this brew warm up a little straight out of the fridge. Potentially grab a pint, leave your bottle there, let it sit for half an hour, if not 40 minutes, and come back for the second. I think the second glass, as the temperature has changed, is certainly a different drinking experience. The malt character on this, remembering we use 1.5 kgs of amber malt. What I get from that within this broader flavour profile is some really toasted notes on the back. So bringing that all together, we've got a citrus front, a really complex fruit flavour profile, a huge bitterness to this, or a really strong, at least a very strong bitterness, and very prominent toasted notes sitting in the back with the malt character. So overall, a very complex flavour profile. What I would say is generally a high quality finish, which we've come to expect from the craft series brews. I don't think anyone will disagree with that. I think overall a enjoyable beer. If I walked up and grabbed a pint of that, I would certainly enjoy it and say it was a good beer, but I think to really like this is probably a narrower preference set. So yeah, it's not a criticism of the beer, I just think it's a more specific preference set to really like that. A couple of other things from me is the way we did this brew with 1.5 kgs of malt. It's turned this brew into a really heavy brew. So when I say 1.5 kgs of malt, that was the additional fermentable. So the base malt in this already had 2.7 kgs or thereabouts coming out of the craft series kit. We then put another 1.5 in, so that's up to 4.2 kgs. That's really big. If I was going to do this again, actually before I say that, so what this has given us, and we didn't talk about this before, is a really solid body and a really solid feel to this beer. Again, I think there's some personal preference there. I struggled drinking this a little bit, and the reason why, when I say that, the reason was I predominantly drank this over early summer, and it was way too heavy for when I was trying to drink it. So for the way I did it, where it came out with a really big body, is probably for me more of a winter brew, the kind where you sit on a couple of pints for the evening and you're all good. It would be really nice drinking like that, the way we've done it. If I did this again, and if that's what you like, that's fine. So like I said, that's I'd be more than happy with that in the winter, probably not so ideal in the summer. If I was going to try and do this differently and lighten it up a little bit, I would have tried two things. If I wanted to stay with the malt for the flavour profile, the next time I do this, I would probably increase the volume of water I add and step this out to, rather than the standard 23, maybe 24 or 25, just to bring the body back a little bit. The other thing I would do is substitute out the malt, 1.5 kgs of amber malt, and use an enhancer instead. The reason I say enhancer, like I think, there's already 2.7 kgs of malt coming out of the the kit, and we have some very distinctive flavours, so necessarily adding depth or strength to those, it is just going to build into that profile of a big heavy brew. So if we're trying to go the other way and lighten this up a little bit, I would go with an enhancer where I'm not adding too much more to the body or the malt character or the depth of flavour, but still trying to get something maybe a little bit better than dextrose. So that would be where I would go. Like I said though, overall, really enjoyable brew with a high quality finish. Next questions. Oh, and actually, sorry, the only other piece I would talk to is I first tried this at 4 weeks. Remembering I said before that this is actually 8 months old, so I've got some bottles left. I tried a bottle last night to refamiliarise myself with the flavour profile. Quite a different drinking experience. So when I first tried this at 4 weeks, the citrus at the front was very profound, and I think the kind of the malt character and the toasted notes at the back were very profound. And I've kind of talked about this before, where the drinking experience, when it was early on, it was almost a little bit disjointed. There was kind of the hop character up the front, throw into the malt character at the back, and it didn't feel like a smooth transition. What I've noticed now, and we wouldn't have had to wait 8 months to get to this point, we would have hit this point around the 8 to 10 week mark. The flavour profile has really mellowed out, smoothed out and matured, right? So the citrus has settled down, we've got a more joined up experience in our flavour profile. Some of those other notes that were in there that I've sort of described, the woodsy, the earthy, the herbal, the complexity and the fruit tones have really come out and become a little bit more identifiable. So in general, I would encourage, if you're going to do this, I would encourage you to plan to let it have a longer period of time to bottle mature. If you do try it earlier, I would suggest trying the odd bottle here and there, but try and save the bulk of your brew until it's around at least the 2 to 3 month mark, to let it have that chance to mature. If you can do that, I think it's going to be a more enjoyable brew. Plug, if you've watched this far, thanks, really appreciate it. Feel free to give us a thumbs up, a like, it goes a long way and helps us out. Feel free to comment below, we do always try and engage with people. Plug for our Facebook group, Homebrew Republic Kit Brewing Community. Bunch of guys and girls in there who are all about kit brewing. Really, if you're new to kit brewing and you're looking for tips, hints, tricks, questions, it's a really helpful place. There's a bunch of brewers in there who have been brewing for ages and are more than happy to share what they've learned. Equally, if you're just knocking around trying to work out how to build your next recipe or whether you want to do a certain kit or not, the guys are always happy to talk about what they like and don't like and what they think's good and not good, or suggest different combinations of ingredients. And certainly even on a personal level for myself, I use the group or lean on the community for that reason, to ask what people think or what people's thoughts are, and I get a lot out of it. So yeah, it's a great bunch of people. Feel free to track us down and come and jump in. In terms of brews and brew reviews and stuff that we've got on, next brew reviews, I've got a Mexican lager, which I did that before Christmas. I've got a cider, peach and passion fruit, which is, both of those are in bottles now. I have in my fermenting now another craft series brew. It's the Mangrove Jack's Craft Series Hazy IPA. Bit of an interesting brew, that one. Yeah, a little bit unique to what I've seen out of the craft series range so far. 2 brews that I'm super excited about. So one I've got in bottles now, and I've done another stout. And what I've done, it's an extract brewing recipe. I did it with some black rock kits, and I've gone for a coffee cream stout. And I did my taste tests of the full recipe going into bottles the other day, and I was super excited. So looking forward to that one. The next brew I put down, which will be hopefully next week, and I'm really excited about this as well. I'm going for a clone recipe. I'm targeting the Panhead Supercharger APA, which is actually one of my favourite brews if I'm out, one of my go-to brews. And an area I want to push into a bit more as well is just exploring clone recipes and seeing what we can do. So that's the first cab off the rank. I'm going to do that with some Brick Road kits, and I'm really excited about that that brew there. Yeah, cool. All right, so back to where I was before. If you've watched this far, again, thank you. Really appreciate your support. Those are the brews coming up. Like we said, jump onto Facebook, find the Homebrew Republic kit brewing community, jump onto our website, www.homebrewrepublic.co.nz. Other than that, I'm going to say cheers.
Cheers.